What you've been chasing was never ahead of you. It was always within you, waiting to be remembered. We've been taught that wanting is the fuel of life, that desire drives us forward, gives us purpose, makes us human. But here's the paradox nobody prepared you for. Wanting is the very thing keeping you from what you seek. It's the noise that drowns out the stillness. It's the reaching that creates the distance. Eastern philosophy understood this centuries ago. The Buddha called it Tanha, the thirst that can never be quenched. Because wanting isn't about what you lack. It's about forgetting what you already are. This isn't another self-help formula. This isn't about manifesting, achieving, or becoming a better version of yourself. This is about something far more unsettling, far more liberating. The recognition that you don't need to want it, you need to be it. And being doesn't require effort. It doesn't require search. It only requires one thing, the courage to stop running and remember what never left. And it's about that this video speaks. There's a peculiar thing about wanting. It never really tells you what it's after. Someone wakes up craving success, love, recognition, maybe peace. They chase it like it's somewhere out there, waiting to be claimed. But here's the twist. Wanting isn't the confession of what you need. It's the confession of forgetting what you already are. Eastern philosophy understood this long before psychology caught up. The Buddha called it Tanha, thirst. Not for water, but for something that was never missing in the first place. Desire becomes the disguise, the mask that hides absence, or what the mind believes is absence. The mind's a trickster, isn't it? It whispers, you'll be complete when you get that promotion, when they finally see you, when the pain stops, and you believe it. You run toward the horizon, thinking fulfillment's just one more step away. But desire, in its truest form, isn't direction, it's noise. It's the ego's way of convincing you that being isn't enough, that you need to become. The Tao teaches, what is real does not need to be forced. Yet we force, we push, we grasp, we accumulate. And the more we want, the further we drift from what's already here, already whole. Self-awareness begins when you stop asking, what do I want? And start asking, what am I running from? Think about the last time you wanted something desperately. Maybe it was a relationship, a job, a version of yourself that felt shinier, more acceptable. You got it, or maybe you didn't. Either way, the wanting didn't stop, did it? It just shape-shifted. This is the psychology of pain in its quietest form. Emotional pain doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just whispers, more, different, elsewhere. Shadow work reveals that beneath every desire lies a wound, a belief that you're incomplete. Jung spoke of the shadow as the part of ourselves we refuse to see. Wanting keeps you looking outward so you never have to look inward. It's a distraction, a spiritual detour disguised as a destination. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. What if you didn't need what you think you need? What if the ache isn't about lack, but about resistance to what already is? Zen Buddhism calls this Dukkha, suffering born from craving and attachment. You suffer not because you don't have enough, but because you believe the story that you're not enough. The mind-body connection plays its part here. Your body tenses, your chest tightens, your breath shortens, all because the mind projects a future where you're finally okay. But that future never arrives. It can't, because the only moment you'll ever have is this one. And in this one, wanting is just a shadow cast by the light of being. So here's the real question, the one that cuts through the noise. If wanting is the disguise, what's underneath? What's so unbearable about standing still, about admitting distance from your essence, that the mind would rather send you chasing ghosts? The East says, desire is noise, not direction. To desire is to admit you've forgotten, and forgetting feels safer than remembering. Because remembering means facing what you've been running from all along. The mirror doesn't lie, but looking into it, that takes something most people aren't ready to give. Not yet, but the body knows. It always knows. And it's starting to whisper louder now, isn't it? The body tries and tries and tries. It pushes through exhaustion, forces smiles, manufactures energy it doesn't have. There's a belief woven deep into the mind that if you just work harder, if you just do more, something will finally shift. But here's what nobody tells you. Effort, when it becomes relentless, isn't strength. It's doubt wearing a disguise. It's the soul hesitating, wrapped in the language of productivity. Every effort born from disbelief in the natural flow becomes a quiet confession. I don't trust that things can unfold without me forcing them. Wu Wei teaches, what is real does not need to be forced. Yet we force anyway, hoping effort will silence the whisper that says we're not doing enough. Think about the last time you tried too hard. Maybe it was in a conversation where you over-explained yourself, trying to prove your worth, or a project where you kept tweaking, adjusting, never feeling like it was good enough. That's not dedication. That's fear disguised as diligence. The psychology of pain shows up here in subtle ways. When you don't trust the process, when you don't trust yourself, effort becomes a coping mechanism. It's how the ego protects itself from the terror of stillness, from the possibility that maybe, just maybe, you're already enough without all the striving. Spiritual transformation doesn't come from doing more. It comes from recognizing when doing itself is the obstacle. Eastern philosophy has a phrase for this: effortless action. Not laziness, not passivity, but alignment. When a river flows, it doesn't try. It simply moves with what is. When wind passes through bamboo, the bamboo doesn't resist. It bends, it dances. But the mind grips, it calculates. It says, if I let go, everything will fall apart. So you keep pushing, keep forcing, keep pouring energy into things that would resolve themselves if you just stepped back. Taoism calls this the art of non-attachment. Not detachment, that's cold, distant. Non-attachment is warm, present, but unforced. It's trusting that life doesn't need your constant intervention to unfold as it should. Here's an example. Let's say you're trying to fix a relationship. You send the text, you plan the conversation, you rehearse what you'll say. You're trying to control the outcome because deep down, you doubt that things can heal naturally. But relationships, like rivers, have their own current. The more you force, the more you create resistance. Shadow work asks, what are you really afraid of? That if you stop trying, you'll be abandoned. That if you stop performing, you'll be seen as unworthy. These are the beliefs hidden beneath effort, the ones that turn action into exhausting, endless labor. Suffering and awakening live in the same space. The moment you realize your effort is born from fear, not love, is the moment transformation begins. The body knows when effort is authentic and when it's compensation. Your shoulders carry tension. Your jaw clenches. Your breath becomes shallow, restricted. The mind-body connection doesn't lie. When effort comes from doubt, the body feels it as strain. When action comes from alignment, the body feels it as flow. Meditation and suffering intersect here. Sit still long enough, and you'll feel the impulse to do something, anything, to escape the discomfort of simply being. That impulse, that's doubt. That's the mind saying, you're not enough as you are. But here's the paradox. The moment you stop trying to be enough is the moment you discover you always were. And that discovery, it doesn't come from effort. It comes from surrender, which is beginning to feel less like weakness and more like the only honest path forward. Whoever wants is not here. It's that simple and that devastating. The mind projects itself away from the now, spinning stories about tomorrow next month, someday. When I have that, I'll be happy. When I become that, I'll finally rest. But wanting is the mind's way of rejecting what is. It's saying, this moment isn't enough. I'm not enough. So I'll live somewhere else, anywhere but here. Eastern philosophy saw through this illusion centuries ago. The Zen masters would sit with students and ask, where are you right now? Not physically, spiritually. And most couldn't answer, because they were always elsewhere, chasing futures that didn't exist, running from presents they couldn't accept. Being doesn't reach, it inhabits. That's the paradox most people miss. You think wanting propels you forward, gives you purpose, keeps you alive. But wanting is actually a form of spiritual absence, a refusal to be where you are. Self-awareness begins when you catch yourself mid-want and ask, what am I avoiding right now? Maybe it's boredom. Maybe it's grief. Maybe it's the quiet terror of realizing you don't know who you are when you're not chasing something. The ego thrives on wanting because wanting keeps you distracted. It keeps you from the one thing that terrifies it most, presence. Because in presence, the ego dissolves. In presence, there's no story to maintain, no identity to defend. Think about how you scroll through your phone when you're uncomfortable, or how you plan the next thing while you're still in the middle of this thing. That's wanting in motion. Small, constant, relentless. Impermanence teaches that everything changes, everything passes. But the mind doesn't want to sit with that truth. It wants to control, to secure, to make permanence out of what was never meant to last. Buddhism calls this Anicca, the understanding that clinging to what shifts only creates suffering. When you want, you cling. When you cling, you suffer. Not because what you want is bad, but because wanting itself is a denial of the only moment you'll ever actually have. Here's where trauma healing intersects with spiritual transformation. Many people want because they're running from something they haven't faced. A childhood wound, a loss they never grieved, a version of themselves they buried because it wasn't acceptable. Wanting becomes the escape route, the way to avoid the uncomfortable work of being present with pain. Shadow work doesn't ask you to get rid of wanting. It asks you to see it for what it is, a defense mechanism, a way the psyche protects itself from the rawness of now. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Wanting is often unconscious fate, destiny written by avoidance, not intention. So what happens when you stop wanting? Not in a forced, repressive way, but in a way that's honest, awake. You start to notice what's here. The breath moving in and out, the weight of your body in the chair, the quiet hum of aliveness that doesn't need anything added to it. Mindfulness isn't about achieving some blissed-out state. It's about coming home to the present, even when the present is uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. Detachment, in the truest sense, isn't coldness. It's freedom. It's the ability to let life move through you without gripping it, without demanding it be different than it is. And that freedom? It doesn't come from getting what you want. It comes from realizing you were never separate from what you needed. But the mind isn't ready to hear that yet. Not fully. Because hearing it means letting go of the one thing it's been holding on to for dear life. The belief that somewhere, someday, wanting will finally deliver you home. Every desire comes from the feeling of lack. It's not spoken aloud, but it's there. Underneath every reaching, every grasping, every I need more. The ego wants to fill what was never empty. It scans the world, measuring, comparing, calculating worth. Am I successful enough? Loved enough? Seen enough? And the answer is always no. Not because you're actually lacking, but because the question itself is rigged. Being doesn't seek wholeness. It is wholeness. But the mind forgot that somewhere along the way. Maybe it was childhood, when love felt conditional. Maybe it was society, teaching you that value comes from achievement, not existence. Either way, the belief took root. You are not enough, as you are. This is where emotional pain becomes a quiet, constant companion. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's just a low hum in the background, a sense that something's missing, something's wrong. The psychology of pain reveals that this feeling isn't about what you lack. It's about the story you believe. Jung called it the shadow, the part of yourself you rejected because it didn't fit the image you needed to project. Maybe you buried your softness because the world rewarded hardness. Maybe you hid your anger because it wasn't acceptable. Whatever you pushed down didn't disappear. It just became the voice that whispers, "You're not enough." And that voice? It's been running the show longer than you realize. Let's get practical for a moment. Think about the last time you felt inadequate. Maybe someone else got the recognition you wanted. In the mirror and didn't like what you saw. What did you do? Did you push harder, work longer, try to prove yourself? That's the ego's survival mechanism. Do more, be more, become more. But here's what Eastern philosophy understood. The fear of not being enough can't be solved by becoming more. It can only be dissolved by seeing through the illusion. Zen asks, who were you before you were told who to be? That question cuts through everything. Because before the conditioning, before the wounds, before the fear, you just were. No justification needed. No performance required. Shadow work is uncomfortable because it asks you to sit with the parts of yourself you've been running from. The inadequacy, the shame, the belief that you're fundamentally flawed. Trauma healing doesn't happen by covering those wounds with achievement or affirmation. It happens by bringing them into the light, seeing them clearly, and recognizing they were never the truth. They were just stories, survival strategies, ways your psyche tried to keep you safe in a world that felt unsafe. The mind-body connection holds all of this. Your chest tightens when you feel less than. Your stomach drops when you're criticized. Your body is keeping score, holding the fear in its tissues, waiting for you to finally turn around and face it. Here's the paradox. The fear of not being enough only exists because you believe wholeness is something you achieve, not something you already are. Samsara and nirvana aren't two different places. They're two different perspectives. Samsara is the endless cycle of seeking, striving, never arriving. Nirvana is the recognition that you were never separate from what you sought. Enlightenment through pain doesn't mean suffering endlessly. It means using the suffering as a doorway, a crack in the armor where light finally gets in. The ego resists this. It says, if I stop trying to be enough, I'll be nothing. But that's the lie. Because on the other side of that fear, in the space where striving ends, there's something waiting, something that's been there all along, patient, unshaken, whole. And it's starting to make itself known now, isn't it? Not through answers, through silence, through the slow, terrifying, liberating collapse of everything you thought you had to be. The search itself is the final illusion. Someone decides they want enlightenment, peace, awakening, whatever name they give it. They read books, attend retreats, meditate for hours. They're seeking something sacred, something transcendent. But here's the cruel irony. Whoever seeks enlightenment confirms the idea of darkness. The act of searching creates the very separation it's trying to bridge. Eastern philosophy points to this again and again. The Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. The Buddha that can be found is not the true Buddha. Satori arrives when the seeker disappears. Not because you found what you were looking for, but because you finally realized you were never lost. This is spiritual transformation at its most disorienting. You think the path leads somewhere, toward wisdom, toward wholeness, toward some enlightened version of yourself. But the path doesn't lead forward, it collapses inward. Every step you take in search of more is a step away from what already is. Mindfulness teaches presence, but even mindfulness can become another project, another thing the ego claims. I'm spiritual now, I meditate, I practice detachment. But if you're practicing to become something, you're still trapped in the same cycle, just with different language. Ego dissolution doesn't happen because you followed the steps correctly. It happens when the one following the steps finally sees through the game. Let's be honest here. How many spiritual books have you read? How many teachers have you listened to, hoping they'd have the answer? Maybe you tried Buddhism, Taoism, meditation practices, shadow work, and maybe some of it helped. But did it deliver you? Or did it just give you new concepts to carry, new identities to perform? The psychology of pain shows that searching can become another form of avoidance. You're so busy looking for the light that you never sit with the darkness. You're so focused on becoming awakened that you never ask, who is it that wants to awaken? Jung warned about this. The spiritual bypass, the way people use spirituality to avoid the messy, uncomfortable work of being human. Here's a real example. Someone loses a loved one and dives into spiritual practice, talking about impermanence, karma and rebirth, acceptance. On the surface, it looks like growth, but underneath, they're running from grief. They're using philosophy to numb the ache instead of feeling it. Suffering and awakening aren't opposites, they're partners. You don't transcend pain by rising above it. You transform it by moving through it, by letting it crack you open until there's nothing left to defend. Trauma healing requires this kind of honesty. It asks you to stop seeking answers and start sitting with the questions. To stop trying to fix yourself and start seeing yourself clearly, without judgment, without the need to be anywhere other than exactly where you are. The paradox deepens. The more you search, the more you reinforce the belief that something's missing. The more you strive for inner stillness, the more you create noise. Wu Wei, effortless flow, can't be achieved. It can only be allowed. And allowing feels terrifying because it means giving up control, giving up the story that you're on your way to somewhere better. Non-attachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging to outcomes. Stop demanding that life deliver you from yourself. The spiritual search ends not when you find what you're looking for, but when you finally stop looking. When the question dissolves. When the seeker, exhausted, sits down in the middle of the path and realizes there was never anywhere to go. And in that moment of surrender, something shifts. Not toward light, not away from darkness, just here, whole, undivided. But the mind isn't ready to let go yet. It's still gripping, still hoping, still convinced that one more book, one more insight, one more awakening will finally be enough. And that grip, it's about to break. Surrender is not giving up, it's ending the noise of wanting. There's a moment, quiet and unremarkable, when the fight finally stops. Not because you won, but because you realize there was never a battle to begin with. The mind spent years building walls, strategies, defenses. It convinced you that control was safety, that effort was virtue, that wanting was alive. But all of it was just noise, static between you and what you already are. True power begins when effort ends. Not the effort of action, but the effort of resistance. The effort of pretending you're anything other than what you've always been. Silence is not weakness. It's returning to the core. And the core, it was never broken. Eastern philosophy understood this long before psychology tried to name it. The Tao calls it Pu, the uncarved block, the state of being before conditioning, before the mind learned to complicate everything. Surrender isn't collapse, it's clarity. It's the moment you stop forcing the river to flow backward and let it carry you where it was always going. Wu Wei teaches that real strength doesn't announce itself. It doesn't flex, doesn't perform. It simply is. A tree doesn't try to grow. It grows. A wound doesn't try to heal. It heals. And you? You don't need to try to be whole. You just need to stop pretending you're not. Let's get specific. Think about the last time you surrendered something. A relationship, a job, a version of yourself you were clinging to. What happened? Maybe it felt like death at first. Ego dissolution often does. The mind screams, if I let go, I'll lose everything. But what you actually lose is the illusion, the story, the exhausting performance of being someone you're not. Spiritual transformation doesn't look like transcendence. It looks like coming home. It looks like sitting in your living room, ordinary and unremarkable, and realizing you don't need to be anywhere else. Trauma healing happens here, in this space. Not in the grand epiphanies, but in the quiet acceptance that you're allowed to stop fighting yourself. The mind-body connection reveals surrender in ways words can't. Your shoulders drop. Your jaw unclenches. Your breath deepens. No longer shallow and guarded. The body knows when you've stopped resisting. It's been waiting for this moment, holding tension in every muscle, every cell, every beat of your heart. Meditation and suffering taught you to sit with discomfort without escaping it. Now, surrender asks you to go further, to stop labeling discomfort as the enemy. Pain isn't punishment. It's information. It's the body saying, something here needs attention. And when you finally give it that attention, without trying to fix it, without needing it to be different, something shifts. Not into bliss, into presence, into the strange, unsettling peace of simply being with what is. Here's the truth. Most spiritual teachings won't tell you. Surrender doesn't make life easier. It makes life real. The noise stops, yes, but so does the distraction. You're left with yourself, unfiltered, undefended, unavoidable, and that can be terrifying. Because without the wanting, without the striving, without the story of who you're supposed to become, who are you? Detachment answers. You're no one, and everyone. You're the awareness watching the thoughts, not the thoughts themselves. You're the space where experience happens, not the experience. Non-attachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging to outcomes, stop demanding permanence from what was always meant to flow. And in that space where surrender meets awareness, something emerges. Not enlightenment, not awakening, just being. Simple, unforced, whole. And it's been here all along, waiting for you to stop searching and start remembering. Detachment dissolves wanting and reveals being. It's not cold, it's not distant, it's the warmest thing there is, because it's real. When you stop needing things to be different, when you stop clinging to outcomes, what's left is pure presence. You're here, fully here, without the filter of expectation distorting everything. The Tao is the path that never needed a destination. It flows because that's its nature. It doesn't ask where it's going. It doesn't mourn where it's been. Eastern philosophy calls this Anicca, impermanence. Everything changes, everything passes. And the moment you stop resisting that truth, the moment you stop trying to make permanent what was always temporary, you step into a different way of being. Not detached from life, detached from the illusion that life owes you anything other than this moment. When seeking ends, everything appears. That's the paradox nobody tells you about. You spend years chasing peace, love, clarity, thinking they're somewhere out there. But they're not. They're here. They've always been here. They were just hidden beneath the noise of wanting, beneath the desperation to be somewhere other than where you are. Self-awareness becomes effortless when you stop performing it. You're not trying to be mindful, you just are. You're not trying to be present, you just notice that presence is all there ever was. The ego fought this for so long because detachment felt like death. And in a way, it is. It's the death of the false self, the constructed identity, the story you've been telling yourself about who you need to be. Let's make this practical. Imagine you're in a conversation and someone criticizes you. The old pattern would be to defend, explain, justify. The ego would flare up, demanding to be seen, to be right. But detachment? Detachment lets the words pass through like wind through bamboo. Not because you don't care, but because you're not clinging to an image of yourself that needs protecting. You're just here, listening, breathing, present. That's not indifference. That's freedom. Shadow work prepared you for this. It showed you the wounds, the fears, the parts of yourself you thought you had to hide. And now you don't need to hide anything. Not because you've perfected yourself, but because you've stopped believing perfection was ever the point. The mind-body connection deepens in detachment. Your body relaxes in ways it couldn't before. Tension that's lived in your shoulders for years starts to melt. Your breath moves freely, no longer restricted by the constant vigilance of needing to control everything. Trauma healing reaches completion here, not because the trauma disappears, but because you stop letting it define you. You see it clearly, you hold it with compassion, and then you let it be what it is. Something that happened, not something you are. Meditation and suffering taught you to sit with pain. Detachment teaches you that pain doesn't need to be solved. It just needs to be seen. And when it's truly seen, without resistance, without the need to make it mean something about your worth, it transforms. Not into joy, into peace, the kind that doesn't depend on circumstances. Here's where spiritual transformation completes itself. Not in some grand awakening, but in the quiet, unremarkable act of being okay with what is. Impermanence doesn't scare you anymore. You understand that everything you love will change, will end, will pass. And instead of making you cold, that understanding makes you tender. You love more deeply because you're not clinging. You're present because you know presence is all you have. Non-attachment becomes the ultimate form of love. Love without possession, without demand, without the need to control. Wu Wei flows through you now, not as a practice, but as a way of being. Effortless, natural, whole. And the mirror? The one you were so afraid to look into? It doesn't reflect lack anymore. It reflects exactly what you are. Not perfect, not enlightened. Just here, just real. Just enough. And that's when you realize remembering was never about finding something new. It was about coming home to what never left. Nothing was ever lost. That's the final revelation, the one that dissolves every question you ever asked. You spent years searching, striving, becoming. You read the books, followed the teachers, practiced the methods. You thought you were on a journey towards something. But the journey was circular. It brought you back to where you always were. Here, now, whole. Wanting disappears when remembering begins. Not remembering a past, but remembering a presence that never left. Being is simply coming home. And home was never a place you had to reach. It was the ground beneath your feet all along, waiting for you to stop running and finally stand still. Eastern philosophy whispers this truth in every teaching. Zen says, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Nothing changes. Everything changes. The wood is the same. The water is the same. But you're seeing it for the first time without the veil of wanting, without the noise of becoming. Buddhism speaks of anatta, no self. Not that you don't exist, but that the self you thought you were, the one you defended and performed and struggled to perfect, was always just a story. And when the story ends, what's left isn't emptiness, it's fullness. The kind that doesn't need anything added to it. The kind that was always here, beneath the layers of conditioning, beneath the wounds, beneath the fear. Let's be clear about what this means. This isn't some abstract spiritual concept. This is your life right now. You're sitting somewhere reading these words, breathing, and in this moment, you're not lacking anything. The mind might argue. It might say, but I need to fix this, achieve that, become someone better. But that's just the old pattern, the old noise. Self-awareness asks, who is it that needs to become? And when you look closely, really look, you can't find them. There's just awareness, just presence, just the simple, undeniable fact of being. Ego dissolution isn't a mystical event. It's the recognition that the ego was never solid to begin with. It was just a collection of thoughts, beliefs, defenses, and thoughts. They come and go like clouds. They were never you. Spiritual transformation completes itself in ordinariness, not in bliss, not in transcendence, but in the kitchen, washing dishes, in the morning, feeling the weight of your body waking up, in the evening, watching the light fade. Impermanence becomes beautiful instead of terrifying. You see everything changing, everything passing, and instead of clinging, you let it flow. Samsara and nirvana collapse into one. There's no cycle to escape, no suffering to transcend. There's just this, life, unfolding, moment by moment. Trauma healing brought you here. It showed you the wounds weren't flaws. They were doorways. Shadow work brought you here. It revealed that what you rejected wasn't darkness. It was just the parts of yourself you hadn't learned to love yet. Here's what remembering feels like. Quiet, not silent, but still. The mind-body connection settles into a rhythm that doesn't need effort. Your breath moves naturally. Your heart beats without instruction. Your body knows how to be. It always did. You were just too busy trying to force it into something else. Meditation and suffering taught you to sit with discomfort. Now, you're not sitting with anything. You're just being. Mindfulness isn't a practice anymore. It's what you are. Detachment isn't something you do. It's how you move through the world, lightly, lovingly, without the weight of needing everything to be different. And enlightenment through pain? It wasn't about becoming enlightened. It was about realizing you were never in the dark. You were just looking away. But now you're looking, and what you see is simple, devastating, and true. You were always whole. You were always here. You were always enough. Nothing was ever lost. You're just remembering, and remembering feels like waking up inside a dream you forgot was yours. You've walked through the noise. You've seen the wanting for what it is, a disguise, a distraction, a denial of what was always here. The search ends not because you found something, but because you finally stopped looking. Surrender isn't weakness. Detachment isn't coldness. Being isn't passive. They're the most honest things you'll ever do. And now, standing in this space where effort dissolves and presence remains, there's only one question left. Do you still believe you need to become something? Or are you ready to remember what you've always been? If this video touched something true inside you, if it spoke to a part of yourself you've been running from or searching for, then stay. There's more here. Not answers, but reflections. Not destinations, but pathways. The kind that don't lead you somewhere else. The kind that bring you deeper into now. And if you're wondering what comes next, if you're curious about the force that moves through stillness, the power that doesn't need to announce itself, then perhaps you're ready for what waits ahead. The force that silences. Lao Tzu would call it peace. It's not a lesson, it's a recognition, and it's already calling you.